Marc Lottering is in the building, y'all. Good morning, my darling. How are you doing?
Good morning. I'm very well, thank you.
Such a pleasure to have you here. You were one of the quiz questions a little bit earlier on. We were asking about your biggest character, and obviously it's antimale.
Oh, okay. Was that the answer? Is that the answer you went with?
Lester Kivet is also here, and I have a feeling it's going to get even worse with Lester here. But we're going to get to you. No, because when you two, I have a feeling you're both mischievous.
We're both from Retreat. The difference is Mark is Retreat's favorite son. I'm my parents' only son, and I'm not even their favorite son.
I don't know. I mean, we can discuss the name of that retreat and what it means.
I know what it means.
And already, we're going
because
back.
when you retreat, you reverse.
Yes.
You reverse because the Retreat's nickname is the Reverse. So when you retreat, you go back, you reverse. Sorry.
Reverse back, as my people would say.
I always think it's good grounds to break up with someone when
bad grammar.
When they say it's reverse back or
Determine.
on the first date. I listen to because the
Yes.
way people speak.
Yes.
When you speak, if you've got your verbs and your tenses sorted, it's a real turn on for me. But if you sit across the table from me and you go, nah, and then I just quickly reversed back and I'm like, oh, no. I gotta go.
It's over. I gotta go to bed.
Yeah.
Good morning, Mark.
Good morning.
Nice to have you back. Were you in East London or London?
I was, well, for Instagram, I was in London, but actually I was in East London. It was much quicker to
The
travel.
jet lag is killer.
Yeah. I got jet lag from potholes, but yeah.
Talk to us about being the funniest guy, but so serious about business.
Comedy is a serious business. I think, I've said this so many times. We live in a country where, if you don't have a funny perspective, sometimes you will just not survive and you will not make it through the day. And it goes both. It's great for me, for business, but South Africans have always enjoyed laughing and have always enjoyed laughter. And it was so interesting when I was performing in London last week, because I spoke to the staff at the theatre afterwards, and they said they've never quite seen anything like it because we were at Leicester Square Theatre and it's on the West End. And for the first time, in Leicester Square Theatre, somebody brought Kusistas.
Yeah.
Which is the Leicester Square Theatre the West End had never seen Kusistas before.
Cute.
And the South Africans who came to the show just felt it was the right thing to do. So, so already there, it was a big talking point with the Londoners and when I offered them Kusistas,
yes.
they, when you say it in English, you say, no, it's a delicacy. It just doesn't look or sound like a delicacy.
No.
But that's an example of the South Africanness of us, and that regardless as to what's going on in our country and in the world, we make time to celebrate, and we make time to celebrate ourselves. And I think being a South African comedian, it is about that for me.
Yeah.
I like it when people walk out of the theatre and not only have they had a great laugh, but that people actually feel great.
Yeah.
And that regardless as to what the storylines were, what the topics were, that we still have a sense that we should celebrate ourselves as human beings for still being here after going through so much.
So that's the one thing that I always, whenever people, around about Heritage Month, we try and reflect on the show on what it is that binds us. Why is it that we stick together as a family, as South Africans? And the first thing that comes up every time is trauma.
Yeah.
We've had a very traumatic history, but also our ability to laugh at the trauma. And those are two sides of a very powerful coin that I think keep most of our mental health pretty strong, thanks to you.
Yeah. It's interesting because sometimes you laugh when you think about it afterwards. And the issues are quite serious. I mean, when we landed at Heathrow, for some reason or other, and this really happened, but we don't know why, but the guy behind the counter at some point just said, can all African travelers please go
What?
He said, I'm not lying. One like custom. He said, can all African travelers please go to that desk? It was just I don't know, in his head, a way of, the paperwork. Yeah.
Yes.
And one person put up a hand and said, and Cape Town? And Anwar and I nearly peed in the queue, but we didn't because we didn't want them to think we're nervous. Then they double-checked.
Right.
But we fully expected it to be Leon Schuster or somebody dressed up as going, and Cape Town. And he just stared at her, and even he thought for a minute, and he said, no, go to that queue. Go to that queue.
Well, we do think we're a little different in Cape Town, yeah.
So, you look at a story like that, and you think there is no punchline to that really, but...
We dropped those signs years ago. With Africans this side. Non-Africans or Europeans this side. We dropped those signs years ago.
We don't do that. Those are only in the apartheid museum.
What about an Afrikaans test? You have to do Ryanair
instructed
South Africans to do in
Africa.
Months back, So how are you your trappe van vergelijken?
So let's talk a little bit about what got you into comedy. What made you start laughing? I know you were saying that you recognize that it's good to laugh in South Africa, but what got you to say, okay, because you're also a theatre actor and stuff. Yeah,
I think I'm like a whole lot of people, I enjoy making people feel good.
Yeah.
And I actually wanted, because I grew up in the church, and like most people who grew up in the church, and my father was a church pastor, you actually believe that you can sing, but you firmly believe it.
It's called faith.
It's called faith because you're surrounded by that all the time. And when you grow up and you sing in the church, people get up and they put both their hands in it. And you believe that that's the way the world is going to respond to you. And then you leave the church and you try to sing just like at a random birthday party. And people do lift their hands, but it's saying, stop. Like, what are you doing? We're having such a lekker party. So, but I used to sing with my eyes closed, and I believed that I was Mariah, I was Whitney, I was everything. And one tequila, I was Patti LaBelle. And then you eventually hook up with people who can sing, and you surround yourself with people who can sing, and you realize, maybe that's not what I should be doing. So it was, but having said that though, I did cheat my way into a few musicals. I think people were just astounded that I would present myself for an audition with such confidence.
Yes.
It was like, that people would go like, no, 500 other people need to see this as well. So so I got into a couple of good shows, but even then, I always had a knack for storytelling. I love telling stories. I can be at a braai and tell a lekker story about how, did you see Refilwe was up until 4 a.m. shouting at people on Twitter when she knows she's got a breakfast show. So I eventually, on my 30th birthday, I invited some friends to a party in town, but I hired a microphone. And I was encouraged by my good friend Marianne. She said, tell some stories before the DJ gets here. Oh, wow. And that's what I did. And the owner of that venue said, can you come back for the next 2 weeks and do that every night here in this space? And I can guarantee you that people will pay to come and listen to this. It was on my 30th birthday, and I never went back to a desk. But I will not say I never went back to singing. I still try now and sneak it into the show because I figure, well, you're already here. So you've played for the jokes. But how about a song, folks? You know it. So when I started telling stories, I enjoy a colorful story, and I enjoy making people laugh and making people feel comfortable. Yes. So I guess I was very resistant initially when people called me a comedian, because one of my part-time jobs, I worked at the Baxter Theatre as an usher when I was at UCT, and I used to watch shows, and I used to watch comedy shows and stand-up comedy shows, and these people fire from the hip, and and I never thought that I was that or that I could ever be that. Because it was a very comedy for me when I was introduced to stand-up comedy as a person watching it. It was introduced as this fiery voos thing, it just happens, ba, 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 ba. And I thought, oh, I could never make people feel bad or make fun of other people while they're sitting there, or, so I think I've still got a little bit of that. So I used to call myself a funny storyteller, but now, if people call me a comedian, that's fine. I focus on the EFT, and you can call me whatever you want, man.
So, Mark, that's actually quite powerful that you're saying you never necessarily thought of yourself as a person who fires from the hip, because you're highly quick-witted, extraordinarily, I think, quite fiery, and like you're a little bit the word, it's almost like a subversive comedy. Like, one doesn't see you coming necessarily, and then it's like you're laughing, and then you're like, did he just say that about me? What did he call me? So I think it's an extraordinary talent, and it's one of the most underestimated, I think, and people don't realize how much work goes into comedy. You don't just stand up and be funny. But it's not just narrative comedy that you're good at. You're also great with characters. Let's talk a bit about how Antimale came about.
Antimale is, like many sons, I was quite close to my mom. And I used to, and I eavesdrop a lot. I still do it. I say prayer because I'm not ashamed to admit it. I eavesdrop. It's an area of my life God is still working on. But you will be, if you go to a restaurant with me, you'll be very annoyed because Armand sometimes wants to kill me because I'm looking into his eyes as we're sitting at the table. But there's something going on at this table. Can you not see at the table next door? I am sure they are breaking up and I want to know why. So... there's nothing better than watching a woman put a man in his place. And you can feel it happening at the table. It's a long look of where were you lost? Why did you think you could come home when you did? Because you can see the guy can't even eat the pizza. It's just like, it's dangling there. It's terrible when someone's putting you on your place and they tell you, eat. Because you can't taste food when someone's screaming at you. And so I'm very sensitive to that. I can feel this drama at the other table. And when people don't project, I get annoyed. I mean, when we landed yesterday, someone's luggage, but it wasn't just her luggage didn't arrive. There was drama because it was about a stolen phone from a bag, and this was at the airport. And I knew the drama was going on. And I was annoyed because she was one of the people in the world who still insisted on wearing a mask. Good. So now this drama, I want to know what's going on. My Uber's waiting for me, but she's wearing a mask. And I want to know what happened, because this is obviously a juicy story because all security was there. So I do eavesdrop. And when the character Antimale, and I used to, when my mother and her friends, they would have prayer meetings at the house. And once they were done talking to Jesus, then they would talk about other people. So, which is what one does. After you talk to Jesus, then you talk about how Jesus could possibly deal with this problem. So, and that's the part of the prayer meeting that I love the most. The skinner about the whole road, and who, who's not working, and who goes to visit who, and whose husband still goes to work. So I would listen to all of that, and one of my mother's friends, her name was Merle. And then there was another lady in the group who had a particular laugh, and her bottom lip would curl when she laughs. And so I took all three characters, my mother and her two friends, and I put them into one character. And that just became this delicious woman on stage who would, first tell everybody God is good and God bless you, and then she would dish. And that just makes the dishing so much more palatable. Yes. So that's how that character was born. And I think it's just, it's one of those characters that people love, because when I do that character on stage, there's a lot of pointing that goes on in the audience. It's like, it's your mother, or it's your, and it's so usually cool. The person who's pointing is wearing floral. And I'm like, it's you, baby. Yeah. But everyone goes, I know somebody like that, and I know somebody, because we've all got someone in the family like that. Yeah. So I think people find that character to be quite endearing.
And so are you.
Thank you.
I've loved you since the day we met.
I know. Yeah. And still, I see on Twitter, you don't invite me to your house. You sit there with your friends and you sing Madonna songs. I love Madonna. You have red wine. I love red wine. But, and you have my number, but yet you don't invite me. What do? You bring me ghost pops.
Can Can we hang out and sing Madonna this week?
We can hang out and sing Madonna whenever.
Okay.
Love
And I
Madonna.
forgive
Although
them.
next week I go to Australia, I must say that. Otherwise,
That's good.
my
'cause you'll
agent will kill me.
You probably won't make it.
So we.
That country's filled with the things that are just going to kill you.
But I do want to say, if I'm allowed to say it on the show, of course I am, that South Africans who have family living in Australia, we Perth,
Yes.
Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, and all those details are on marclottering.com.
Thank you.
So, I'm looking forward to having a great
I'm
time
excited
there.
for that one.
Are you excited? Somebody asked me this morning,
Yes.
which do I prefer, South Africans who live in London, or do I prefer South Africans who live in Australia? And I thought that's such an interesting question.
Definitely London.
Do you think like that? So you also say definitely London?
Definitely London.
I think the South Africans in
I don't
London,
know why you
mostly
would
they seem to be
brave
younger.
The outback. How bad are we?
But there's a gentleman who's fighting for Australia in our
Australians?
audience.
Ask Mark if they take something for Colin in Sydney.
Can you take something for Colin in Sydney? Okay, I like the South Africans who live in London. So
Breakfast with Refilwe Moloto on Cape Talk.